Yeah, I don't think it was that, really and truly, I really don't. Um, but having two stepbrothers at the time was a bit different because you gotta remember at this point, I had a sister at this point. Like, I didn't really have brothers, but I was excited to have brothers. But there was things like, Pat was a very bipolar emotional woman, and that's putting it lightly. But she will let our stepbrothers go through our presents. Or one time I got this Easter basket as a gift, and when I tried to confront one of my stepbrothers about it, she took his side and believed him, but I knew for a fact I hadn't opened that and tried to say, "Oh, I opened it before I left," trying to gaslight me, but I knew I didn't. She also hated my guts. Like I remember this one time where she put a paper plate in our trailer as you're going in. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 on Just a Breezy Chat. Last episode, we've got a little bit of an overview of my life and where I've been. Um, but but this time, I figured let's start really breaking the years down now. Figured that would probably make a lot more sense. And anybody in my family, I apologize. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you some of these details might be a little hard to hear. Um, just because like I'm a very private person, and honestly, there's like I don't know. Like this is hard for me to talk about in general because I'm like I said, I'm a very much a closed book kind of person that this it's taken me a while to get to a point to open up about my life. And really this season is really just going through high school, honestly. Um, but my elementary but yeah. But I do have another podcast called True Crime Lounge and Sassy Sun and Belle, in which I had my bestie on there. She's been my best friend going on 17 years now. It's hard to believe, but we met in the fifth grade, and I'll talk a little bit about her today. But um, so in order to get a good timeline of my elementary school years, I think it's for us to real understand that I was at Sweetwater High School, Westside Elementary, then back to Sweetwater, then Thomasville, then FS Irvin, then US Jones. And so I grew up. So my grandparents, as most of you know, my grandparents raised me my, most of my childhood up until about the third or fourth grade. Um, and then while I was at Sweetwater, I would spend a week at Westside, which what I didn't know at the time was a lot of situation that I really didn't understand at the time. But now looking back, I was like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to return me and all of that. But me and my sister. But I was at Sweetwater, um, where I when I was living with my grandparents. And the thing about Sweetwater to remember is that like all the grades are on one campus. It sounds easy in concept, but it's not really. It's harder than it looks, really. We had to wear uniforms. I hated uniforms. Um, I still do hate uniforms, but I hate having to wear uniforms. Then I went to Westside where I didn't have to wear uniforms. I was so happy about that. The thing about Sweetwater is like they didn't really start the whole uniform thing until I was in kindergarten, I think. Um, kindergarten or the first grade, I can't remember when. Um, and then I went back to Sweetwater, and then when my bio dad married my stepmom, we're gonna call her Pat, and my bio dad Jeff, just so no names get um turned, just so no names really get confused, and plus it saves so much time, I think. But then I will go to Thomasville Elementary School for a semester, in which I lived in Pine Hill. Keep that in mind. And then which they would transfer us out of Pine Hill to go to FS Thomasville to go to FS Irvin, which was closer. But we were only white kid. Keep in mind, I'm from rural Alabama. Like the further off the interstate you can get, um, And then I went to go live with my mom and my bio dad in the fifth grade. So, as I said earlier, my Jeff would marry Pat, and Pat had two sons of her own, Cal and Chris. I'm hyphenating those names for this very reason. Um, so it doesn't really give any names out. But they transferred us out because, quote, they did not adjust to Sweetwater. And were asked not to have them come back next year. Yeah, I don't think it was that, really and truly. I really don't. Um, but having two stepbrothers at the time was a bit different because you gotta remember at this point, I had a sister at this point. Like, I didn't really have brothers, but I was excited to have brothers. But there was things like, Pat was a very bipo- bipolar emotional woman, and that's putting it lightly. But she will let our stepbrothers go through our presents. Or one time I got this Easter basket as a gift, and when I tried to confront one of my stepbrothers about it, she took his side and believed him, but I knew for a fact I hadn't opened that and tried to say, "Oh, I opened it before I left," trying to gaslight me, but I knew I didn't. She also hated my guts. Like I remember this one time where she put a paper plate in our trailer as you're going in. The two stepbrothers and my sister went over to paper plates, and when I came in, she targeted me out of all of them. She also, like, there was this one time where I really made a mess of myself, and my mom was up visiting, and she made me go, "I'm a little peapot," in front of her just to embarrass me. And not to mention, there was this one time, keep in mind, this was when they were still married, we were still living with our grandparents at the time. Just came out of living with our grandparents. We got a message to get on our normal bus. And for me and my sister, we thought that meant going to the bus that went to my grandparents' house. Um, we were kids, we didn't know. So it took one of the teachers to come to our grandparents' house to find out we were okay. When we got back when to Melissa's house, she literally had a belt and left a bruises on both me and my sister. Um, yeah. And Jeff, when he found out, he didn't do anything about it but support her. Like we were kids, we didn't know any better. Like worrying around, yes, but we honestly did not know. Like for us, our normal bus was going to our grandparents' house. This relatively new bus was not our normal bus, so we were not used to that bus. Like we knew where we sat on that school bus and everything. But yeah, she hated me. She treated me like the redhead. Even though I am a ginger, she literally treated me like the redhead stepchild. With my sisters, she knew she could get money off of her. With my stepbrothers, she babied them. But when it came to me, she just hated me. Granted, the way she hated me made me hate her even more, and I tried to get on her good side. I really did. Um, but she would also cheat on my bio dad with a guy who would go help her in the bedroom with furniture. Very interestingly enough. Yeah, I knew that was cheating going on at the time, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to keep my mouth shut like a good little girl to stay on her good graces. Um, but she was very hard on me. Like when I say hard, it was just like one misstep and I was getting yelled at. But my sister and stepbrothers, they made a misstep. No, they didn't get yelled at, nothing like that. But yeah, okay, that was a bit triggering for me. Um, but yeah. But she would eventually divorce, and all of that, and divorce, and we all cut all contact with her. Then there were the custody arrangements, which we lived with my grandparents, but we would spend every other weekend with my mom and stepdad, and my bio dad was still living with my grandparents. At the time, even for a brief while after they got married. My grandparents hated Pat, let's keep that in mind. They also hated my mom, which that's a rabbit hole for a whole nother story. Um, but it was basically we would go to my mom and stepdad for a while. Then we would not see him for like almost a year. Then we'll go back to every other weekend like nothing happened. And then when I was in the fifth grade, the summer of my fifth grade year, summer of sixth grade year for my sister, um, we would move in with them permanently. And part of it was because my stepdad, quote, couldn't afford us. As a kid, you can probably imagine that is something you really don't want to hear, right? I mean, imagine how much of a toll that really takes on you. And that's what he literally said, that I can't really afford to take care of y'all right now. But there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I'm not even going into with him. Just because, but it's better to understand, like, that was part of the reason that led to our relationship being burnt completely. But it would be like, we'll live with him permanently with visiting Jeff every other weekend. Up until about a couple years into middle school, where I was just like, I don't want to go. And I was guilt tripped into having to go one weekend. And I was like, no, I hated every minute of going. Like, I taught myself like to do um, computer coding and all of that on a computer just because I did not want to be there. Like, not to mention, every time we came back from his house, we had lice. It was not fun, and that also which led to a lot of bullying that took place as well. But, yeah. But you would think though living with your mom and stepdad would be a step up. Not really. Like there's so many years that I will go into the next episode about where a lot of bullying took place in my middle school years where I really started to get anxiety and really like near the very end of middle school started the whole depression, honestly and truly. But living with mom and stepdad, it wasn't easy. Like we were still like it wasn't physically, but it was also emotionally and mental. I was the only one stable, really, because everyone else was like, because there was like a lot of being harder on my sister. But near the end of high school, I got managed to get away with a lot more because I knew about the cheating that was going on. But yeah, that is it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day.